It's European, but you don't get quite the same cachet as a Mercedes-Benz. It's definitely not as well finished off as an Audi, and it's not exactly the same ultimate driving machine as a BMW. It's low-key and minimalist, kind of like a thinking person's Volkswagen. And it lacks the overt flair of anything with a Renault Sport badge. You could say the new Volvo V40 is an anti-kudos European car. At the very least, it flies well under the radar. But there is one critical area where it overtakes Benz and BMW, where it blows Renault Sport into the weeds and even pulls Volkswagen's and Audi's Teutonic pants right down. They're calling the V40 the world's safest car. If you're in a crash, the new V40 is the closest thing to death-proof that any amount of money can buy. You can probably still die in the new V40 if you try hard enough, but you'd have to try hard. You'd almost certainly walk away from the V40 if you're in any kind of halfway typical crash. Volvo has already promised to eliminate death and serious trauma in its cars by 2020, and that's a big call. But the Swedish company that sold itself to the world on safety by inventing the seatbelt and thus saving millions of lives worldwide certainly seems to be on track. In independent crash tests in Europe, the new V40 not only scores the maximum possible 5 stars, it's the highest scoring car ever tested. The tests cover 4 areas: adult protection, child protection, pedestrian protection, and what they call safety assistance, which is more or less crash avoidance capability. The new V40 brained all those tests. Brilliant overall, best ever recorded for pedestrian safety, best for adult protection, and best for crash avoidance. If safety can be sexy, the V40's hottest trick is its pedestrian protecting airbag system. It's a world first. If you hit a pedestrian, the bonnet decouples and rises up 10 centimetres to cushion against hard contact with the engine parts underneath. A unique U-shaped airbag explodes from the back of the bonnet to protect against head strike with the windscreen and the A-pillars. Despite the way it all looks in slow motion video, it all happens violently in just a few hundredths of a second. Just like this. Nobody plans to crash, obviously. Car crashes are violent, brutal, chaotic and unpredictable. You can drive incident-free for 20 years, then have the worst day of your life without warning, just driving to work or heading up the street to get the groceries. Here in Australia, 1 in 3 road deaths is a pedestrian. It's utterly shocking for the driver who usually doesn't see the pedestrian until they're literally face to face with them plastered against the windscreen, and the consequences for the pedestrian are appalling, even if there's an afterwards. People say that modern cars are soft. They claim modern cars just fold up in a crash like a brutal kind of origami. Well, I can see how someone might think that, but they're wrong. When you see that structural deformation after a crash, you're actually looking at a massive amount of energy that's been absorbed before it got to the people inside. They certainly don't make cars like they used to, and that's a really good thing. There's also no social justice with road trauma. Plenty of the dearly departed were in the right, and many of those who walk away unscathed weren't. Right and wrong have nothing to do with survival. If you chop a car crash up into milliseconds, the bit that kills you is actually very brief. Less than 1/10 of a second. It takes less than the blink of an eye to rob someone of their future when things go wrong on the road. The rest of the car crash is brutal but survivable. During that brief window, the loads imposed on you simply exceed what your major blood vessels and organs can withstand. If that happens, it's all over. So, timing is everything. Airbags, structural deformation zones, the pre-tensioners in the seatbelt, etc. They're all precisely choreographed. Those life-saving safety features rocket into position and wait to cushion the impact with you during that critical but brief window that can kill you. If technology can soften up the crash for just the right blink of an eye, you survive. The car will die in an attempt to save you. It's that simple. You stand on the side of the road and sign the tow truck papers. The cops don't knock on your door and deliver the bad news to your next of kin at something like 3 a.m. When the chips are down and you need protection for those critical 80 milliseconds, no other car can tip the balance your way as hard as the new Volvo V40. If protection trumps all other factors on your hierarchy of personal car buying imperatives, then getting yourself down to a short list of one ultimately safe car is suddenly very easy.